first of all, gentlemen, for one or both of you, whose idea was it to extend this negotiating time for Clayton's extension on this contract, and why?
You know, I think it's something that just with the quick turnaround from our last game to Wednesday, I think it just made sense for all sides to, you know, kind of push it out a little bit, give us some more time.
How would you characterize those discussions at this point?
Pleasant.
I was going to say ongoing.
Ongoingly pleasant.
Andrew, what makes the most sense from both sides involved to keep Kershaw a Dodger? What's beneficial for both of you guys mutually?
I mean, I think, you know, obviously he's made as much of an impact as you can on an organization in terms of success we've had, not just on the field, but from a culture standpoint in terms of bringing up young pitchers and, you know, kind of emulating the work ethic, the drive, you know, but beyond that in terms of as we look out, you know, we've got a couple days here. We're going to continue to have those conversations, and when we get to a point of being able to announce something, obviously it'll be easier to go into more detail.
Where you guys at with Dave?
I'm sorry?
With Dave Roberts.
You know, we talked throughout the year about how optimistic we are that, you know, we're going to work together for a long time, and we remain that way. When we get to a point of having something to announce, we will. You know, obviously this has been a quick turnaround with our last game on Sunday, and so we've got a lot of balls in there, a lot of conversations, and a lot of very important things that, you know, we're working to bring to a point where we can announce them and keep looking forward.
Is there a deadline with Dave?
No.
Andrew, there was something about the Giants being interested in Farhan. Have you guys granted him permission to pursue that?
You know, I think from our standpoint on employee permissions, we obviously get a lot of requests, and we review it on a case-by-case basis. We talk to the people involved, and when it gets to a point where there's something to announce, we will, but it's something we do confidentially and deal with it, you know, quite often.
Farhan, is that case that you're sitting here right now mean you're working for the Dodgers next year?
You haven't fired me, have you? Yeah, I mean, you know, I just echo Andrew's point. My focus right now is purely on this team. We've obviously had a busy week, and we have a lot of work, you know, over the next 24 hours and in the weeks ahead.
Is there any part of you that wants to show that you're the real brains of this operation?
You've been working on that one.
Isn't that clear already?
You practice that one in the mirror.
Are you interested in the Giants stuff, Farhan?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to comment on that. You know, again, I just echo what Andrew says. That stuff, permission request inquiries happen all the time, and you know, right now my focus is on the Dodgers until these guys tell me otherwise.
So what happened in the World Series? What's your evaluation of what happened?
You know, I guess on one hand, it's good that we have so much going on and that it's not really given us an opportunity to kind of reflect back. I mean, the obvious is we really struggled offensively, and we started to see that in LCS as well. And, you know, it was an unfortunate time to, you know, kind of have so many guys at one point kind of struggling. It is baseball. It does happen. But it was obviously unfortunate and made things that much more difficult, and kind of decreased our margin for error on the pitching side with just how many guys up and down our lineup struggled. I think that's the most obvious kind of takeaway. And, you know, obviously different things happened in different games, but, you know, all a little bit different. But I think kind of the central theme is just how much we struggled offensively.
There was a lot made about how you're the first team in series history to have your top 4 home run hitters on the bench, game 1 and 2. Would this cause you to it worked during the season, it worked during the first round, would this cause you to rethink the way you do your lineups?
No, I mean, you know, I think someone who would think about that a little bit further, you know, 90% of the home runs that those guys hit were against right-handed pitching. So the fact that the other team started a lefty mattered, but I also think, you know, we had a very deep lineup against left-handed pitching as well. It's something that, we were extremely, we struggled against lefties for some period of time, and obviously getting Manny, getting David Freese, getting different guys helped. And then other guys that had been really good against that side in the past kind of came on in the second half. So we got to a point where we were very well balanced against left-handed pitching and right-handed pitching. But again, throughout the World Series and really from the NLCS on, we just struggled offensively. It happens over different points in the year. And unfortunately, the timing of that, was most unfortunate.
Do you feel that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to, echo what Andrew was saying, which is, when those guys went to the bench, they weren't being supplanted by typical bench players. And we had guys like Brian Dozier and Matt Kemp and David Freese coming into the game, and all those guys actually, had moments during this World Series and were contributors. And then kind of getting a little bit more to your previous point about kind of what happened in the series, and this may be preempting, questions that are still coming, but, a lot was made of, some of the specific decisions and, some things that happened kind of strategy-wise in the World Series. And, as a general point, we both feel very strongly that, those decisions, those strategic decisions are a result of a process. And, Dave's process is having conversations with us, having conversations with coaches, trusting his own gut, trusting what he sees as these games unfold. And, we believe and we continue to have full confidence in his process. And, sometimes things turn out your way, sometimes they don't. That's baseball. That's the beauty of this game. And, and sometimes it's less than beautiful for you. But, I also think, when you start, putting the microscope on little individual decisions, it's also taking credit away from the other team. And the Red Sox were a terrific team. They had a tremendous regular season and a very successful playoff run. And, to sort of put the microscope down and ask what ifs about, one decision here or there, I think is taking credit away from the tremendous season and series that they had.
So do you feel that the criticism levied against Dave for Game 4 was not valid?
I just, as you look at it, in Game 3, our relievers came out and threw 11 innings in an 18-inning game and basically won us that game. So for him to have confidence in the pen to get the last 8 outs in that game, I think was very understandable. And again, as people have said, it was, a process and a group of personnel that had gotten us to that point. And again, we can't judge things based on single moves here and there. We just have to trust an overall process. And as far as that goes, we have complete confidence in him.
Farhan, you talk about the process. Obviously, a lot of the fans blame Dave for what happened. How much should they be blaming you guys for those decisions?
Well, that's, again, accepting your premise that there's blame to be given. And, again, as we look on the series, we played a really tough team. We had our moments, they had more, and they won the series. So, as we look at what happened in the World Series, we're going to reflect on the roster, reflect on how we can get better. And, as far as responsibility, we're all responsible. Front office, players, coaches, manager, for not getting to our ultimate goal. But as Dave said after Game 5, we have a lot to be proud of, getting back to the World Series and, losing to a very worthy opponent. So, again, there's a difference between, not being fully satisfied and not getting to your ultimate goal and feeling like you have to dole out blame.
How difficult has it been getting over the disappointment of losing here, especially when you consider the fact that you lost the World Series here at home for the second year in a row?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there is a lot of disappointment. That being said, I think that's human nature when we focus so much time and energy and effort, not just front office from our manager, coaches, players, clubhouse guys, training staff, everybody. And we saw it immediately after Game 7 last year, where everybody, was kind of locked back in to not only get back to the World Series, but to finish it off. Like Farhan said, there's a lot to be proud of, and I don't want that to get lost in this. But there is disappointment. We did fall short of what our ultimate goal was. But, from an organizational standpoint, I'm extremely proud of how this team the resiliency of the group, it wasn't the smoothest year, in a lot of respects, and we had a lot of injuries that we had to come back from, and a lot of unheralded guys who kind of stepped up and played pretty significant roles, all of which I think bodes really well for us as we look forward. As proud as we are of this group, obviously there is some disappointment, and all of our focus is going to be on doing everything we can this offseason to put us back in position where we can not only get back to the World Series but to win it. And I think the jumping off point as we start this offseason is something that gives us a lot of confidence. We have a really good core of talent in place, and as we go about looking to kind of supplement and round out our roster, it puts us in position where we feel really good about what 2019 looks like.
Do you anticipate a great deal of turnover from this year to next year as opposed to like last year to this year?
It's tough to say. I think, looking back 3 years ago, we very consciously, retained a lot of our free agents, kind of kept that core group together. We had a lot of confidence, not only in the base level of talent, but also just in the makeup of the group, the composition of the group, how they kind of complemented one another, and the way they kind of competed together. And so, it's something for us as we get into, kind of reviewing the 2018 season and looking ahead. Again, we have a really high baseline of talent, and as we look at, kind of the right combination, I'm sure there will be some turnover. How much is tough to say right now.
Do you have the green light for gold for the luxury tax line? And do you expect to?
It's not something that we've really gotten into at this point, but more than that is I think there's no question that we have plenty of resources to win a World Series next year. There's no question about that. The talent on hand and the flexibility to do that, I think, is definitely there.
When you talked earlier about, go ahead, Bill. I'm just curious on the subject of matchups, if you guys have ever found there to be a correlation between an offense fluctuating with guys maybe not getting into the rhythm of everyday at-bats. I'm just wondering if that's maybe part of the give and take of kind of appealing to the matchup, but then maybe the offense is not as consistent as it was. And if that would lean you to maybe not match up as much this season.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. I don't know that we've looked at it in that level of detail exactly. But more, I think, you think about games where, to Bill's question, a number of our left-handed hitters didn't start, and just how quickly they come into games. Now, you can argue that there's a cost of doing that, of your bench being shorter, but in terms of reps and at-bats, I don't think that really is a cost. It's more about then shortening your bench at a point earlier in a game where you might otherwise not want to. But I think it's more that than not getting reps, because I think one thing is, kind of up and down our lineup, our guys got to play a lot. Like, everyone kind of had a role and a hand in our success, and probably got more opportunities than, guys, 9 through 13 get on other teams. Now, it helps that, our 9 through 13 were really talented, capable players. But I think as far as contributions and kind of having a hand in our success, I think it extended pretty deep.
Yeah, the World Series MVP was a guy who matched up some and platooned some this year. So, all credit to him too. I mean, it's, we've talked a lot about putting our players in what we think is the best position to succeed. And the other part of it is where we've always had a deep roster, and, we think it's actually a positive for our culture that these guys have roles and everybody knows they're going to get a chance to come into a game and make an impact. So, again, I would kind of turn it around and say, the Red Sox pitching was unbelievable in that series. From the starters to the relievers to the starters as relievers, they threw a lot of good arms at us, and we tip our caps to them. I mean, we had an approach that we believe gave us the best chance to succeed, and they were just a little better.
From an organizational perspective, when you have all these players who have sort of sizable platoon splits, from the developmental side, like in exit meetings, do you tell these guys, like, hey, you need to focus on being an everyday player next year? You need to find a way to get rid of your reverse split. Is there a way developmentally to improve that, or is that just kind of outside the scope of possibility at this point in their cycles?
I mean, I think it probably gets it to each individual player, but no, I mean, that's a big focus. Obviously, from an organizational standpoint, as many guys that you have that are really good against left-hand pitching and right-hand pitching is great. It's great for roster construction. It's great for, winning games. It's great for having balance. It's great for depth in case someone gets hurt. I think all in all, that's a very positive thing. From our standpoint, from a player development side, every year we very active discussions about, kind of strengths of our players and goals. And so the goals are, things to work on, and the idea being that the next year you can rip that up and set the goals even higher. So, I mean, I think, to a man, we've got a clubhouse of, really good competitors who want to continue to get better and have that thirst and drive to do that. And, I think our coaches are very well prepared to aid in that. And so it's not always just as easy as I just want it to happen. But I do think that, between our coaches and our players, I think that mindset is there for them to continue to improve on anything that, our guys kind of identify.
I mean, I do think, just to follow up, I think it's a fair question because the way the game's being played and the way rosters are being managed, guys are sometimes confronted with situations for the first time at the big league level. And it's a conversation that we've had with our farm director, Brandon Gomes, a good amount about, position players who, are everyday guys, top prospects. Usually when they have a day off, it's a full day off. But we've talked about, hey, maybe on those days we bring them in off the bench so they have the experience of pinch hitting or getting in a game late. With pitchers, the concept of the opener, which, we didn't use much this year, but obviously is something that's kind of growing in popularity from a strategic standpoint. Getting our young starting pitchers to both have the experience of, starting games, but also coming in the second or third inning and having relievers go out there and start games as well. So I think it's a fair point that it's, putting your young players and prospects in those kinds of situations earlier can certainly help them acclimate.
To go back to the Dave Roberts situation for a moment, I think it's pretty clear from what everybody said. He'd like to stay. He'd like him to stay. You've talked with him about a new contract, I believe, dating back even to the regular season. Since that's been such a long period of time, is there concern that, well, he wants to stay, you want to stay, but maybe there's not a deal to be reached?
No, I wouldn't read into that at all. We talked about it, I think, as far back as spring training into the year, and made a significant amount of progress in just meeting of the minds and talking through things. And I think from all of our standpoints, we reached a point where focusing on the season and what we were trying to do, was more important in all of our minds. I think we all felt good about the working relationship and the prospects looking forward, and just it wasn't an issue at all to kind of table it and pick it up when we were done playing.
What are the obstacles you foresee in re-signing the skipper?
I don't.
Now, I know Kershaw obviously is kind of a high-end kind of free agent, but I don't know what you want to calculate tonight. But obviously the market this year there are a couple of high-end free agents that are in their mid-20s, including one that played here. Do you see yourselves going into that market at all?
I don't know right now. I mean, from our standpoint, again, we feel like we have a really good jumping off point in terms of the talent on hand and depth. That being said, we're going to spend a lot of time, and it's what the winter is really about trying to construct our roster in the way that we feel like puts us in the best position to win. So obviously that speaks to talented players, and we're going to spend a lot of time kind of going through those various guys, whether it's on the trade front, free agent front, and try to figure out the best way to put this roster together.
You mentioned coaches, Farhan. Are all the coaches planning on coming back as far as you guys are?
Yeah, I mean, we would like them all back. So that should be finalized in the next week or two.
Andrew, are you still interested in Kikuchi of Japan? He's willing to come out here, it seems.
It does seem that. From our standpoint right now, it's not appropriate to comment. Obviously, we've watched him pitch a lot. He's extremely talented. And if and when that becomes an opportunity, we'll, focus more on it.
Manny Machado had some big hits. He also clearly didn't hustle sometimes and said he didn't hustle sometimes. What's your final verdict on him, interested in moving forward?
Yeah, Manny, joined us in mid-July. Obviously, when Seager went down, that was a big hole for us, and we were looking at different ways to fill it. And from our standpoint, Manny was and is an impact type player. He came in and kind of helped solidify our lineup, and it was even better at short than we even anticipated. Chris Woodward did some really good work with him. So from a helping us win game standpoint, we feel like he came in and did a lot to get us to the point that we did. He's talked about the not hustling thing, and Doc talked to him a lot about it, and it's something that some guys don't hustle, and it's that they don't really care, and some guys don't hustle and they do care, and so that distinction does matter in terms of the mindset that guys have. For whatever reason, it wasn't a great look. Like being up in the suite and looking at it, it's not a great look. He even commented that he watched a replay of something where he's like, oh, wow, that didn't look great. But again, I don't think it got to the fact that he didn't care. I think he did care, and I think his teammates really liked him and respected him. But there were times where it played out in a way where even he said it wasn't the greatest look.
Yeah, I mean, I think things happen in the heat of battle, and I think what we appreciated on Manny was, one, that he did care. I mean, we saw that up close, day in, day out in the clubhouse, and two, I do feel like there was some accountability on his part. And as far as going forward, when we sat here a year ago after the season we had last year and talked about how great it would be to run it back, because the 2017 team was pretty special, accomplished a lot, and you always feel like when you come up just short, it would be nice to just get the gang back together and make another run at it. But that's not how things play out. Guys go into free agency, and things happen that you don't anticipate. Trade opportunities come up, and by the time we got to spring training in 18, it was a different roster, and that's probably how this offseason is going to play out as well. I mean, we have a lot of good players who are free agents, and they can all help a team, certainly this team next year, but it's too soon to predict exactly what that's going to look like.
How aggressively would you guys look to acquiring late game bullpen help? Philosophically, would you be willing to commit significant money to a setup type reliever?
I think from our standpoint, looking ahead, I think our bullpen being more consistent and better is something that's important. I guess you can say that going into every offseason. From our standpoint, adding someone that can contribute to us winning games is going to be really important. How we go about it, I'm not sure yet. You look back over time at free agent relievers, and it's not a very good track record. So we're not going to do it just to try to win a headline on that day. If we do something to add to our group, it's going to be because we have full conviction it will actually translate into wins and really helping us, lock down games late. And so that will obviously be something that's, kind of front of mind. And how we go about acquiring it, it's going to take some work and effort.
Yeah, I mean, I would say even looking across the way during the World Series at the Red Sox pen, when it wasn't the starters throwing, it was Matt Barnes and Joe Kelly and Ryan Brazier, and that wasn't a group of guys that they just threw a lot of money at. So elite relievers kind of come from everywhere, and that's our responsibility to be resourceful and try to find those guys. And the solution isn't always and is often not just going out and trying to spend money. Sometimes the better relievers come from kind of thinking more creatively about guys who can do that job.
Thank you.
Thank you.